With the authority given to me by the Board of Trustees of the California College of the Arts, I'm pleased, honored to confer on John Baldessari the degree of Doctor of Fine Arts, honoris causa.
My image of art in Los Angeles has always been metaphorically like a roller coaster. It'll go up and then a little bit and boom and up, like this. And now it's been kind of a plateau for a long time, maybe slightly rising. And then you have very signal things like Michael Gobin coming out and Jeffrey Deitch and Annie Philbin and so on. It begins to be a hallmark of something, happening. And I remember around the 80s, young New York artists coming out and kind of sniffing around, I would call it, to say, maybe we shouldn't be in New York, maybe we should be here. So I think that the playing field is getting a little bit level now. But I still tell young artists, if you have a choice of doing a show on the West Coast or doing a show in New York, do it in New York. For this reason, the media is still in New York, and the chances of it getting covered are much greater than getting covered on the West Coast. So my generation, there was no temptation because there really wasn't any money. So you just did it because you couldn't do anything else. And it used to be kind of a joke around that if anybody sold anything, you must be doing something wrong. There's a tipping point. And I'm only talking about fine arts students here because I know you applied arts here, so it wouldn't much apply, and I can't speak to it. But in people in fine art, there's a pressure to have a show as quickly as possible because that's an indicator of some kind of achievement. And then it gets to be very fine-tuned. If it gets, do you sell anything? Did it get reviewed? Were there pictures? Were they black and white or were they colored? Was it this local press coverage, any magazine coverage? And they keep very close track of this. If you have none of those indicators, in a few years you get thinking, well, why should I suffer? Why shouldn't I be able to go out and have dinner like my friends, or own a house, or get married and have children and so on? Who needs this? I remember one of the best comments I ever got from Adela Braziliana Sanaben, and she said to me, maybe sometimes we're not going to like a show you did, but we'll always be behind you. That's all you need. Would any dealer say that now? No. We'll always be behind you as long as you sell. That's a message. A paradigm shift was the mid-'80s. When I was still at Cal Arts. It might have been maybe a year or two ahead. Anyway, I would make a practice of inviting artists from Europe and New York, to come there and talk to students. And once a year, I'd invite a critic or a museum person. And that year, I invited Paula Cooper. Afterwards, she was quite upset. And I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "All they wanted to know was how much my artists were selling for. They didn't care about the art at all." And it's, that's when money really began to enter the conversation. At a certain point, talent is cheap. And I've seen so many really talented students just saying, I'm not going to fight. And then you have to deal with something that you can't will, which is, well, I guess you can will determination, but you can't will obsessiveness. Stranglehold in art in Los Angeles, there was either light and space or plastic, and I said there are other ways of doing art. I wasn't really much into inviting painters or sculptors, and I almost got fired. The chairman of the department said, he actually threatened me. He said, "Oh, if you invite one more of those invisible artists, you're fired." Body parts, let's call it. In that period, I was a friend of mine was working at a billboard company. And they're not done like they are now. They were called 18-sheet billboards or 24-sheet billboards. And the module was about that wide, by about like that, and they were 24 or 18 of them, and they would be put up with wheat paste. I guess I was thinking that, well, this might be material I could use. So I'd go there with my VW bus and pick up stacks of the stuff that they weren't using, and then unwrapping them, and of course then they would just be sections of things. So if there was somebody's face, if the cut was right, you might just get a nose or an ear or a leg or an arm. And I just thought they were so abstract, but then you realize they weren't abstract at all. If you put them all together, then they added up to something. I just would paste those to boards and then paint over them.
I see.
And then when I saw some of those paintings again, there would be one of a nose, and I think of an ear, and so on. I said, God, I should get back into that again. So I started again, and so I started out with, I think, noses and ears, and then I got into elbows and knees and hands and feet and so on. And I read the story of Gogol, right, of the nose, and I loved that, of a nose walking around.
Yeah, you didn't like the face of it.
Yeah. I always had this image of myself, maybe it's because I always felt awkward being so tall, that I'm not an organic whole, I'm a collection of parts. I certainly did have forebears, I guess, man-raised lips. But I said nobody's done noses and ears and so on, because they just don't look so... Lips and eyes detached kind of make sense, but noses and ears, not much.
No, that's something
they shouldn't be detached. There was a quotation by an old Japanese surfer living in Hawaii. He said, "Paddle, paddle, paddle. Someday, big wave will come."